All right, we are recording our meeting. We will post this up to our YouTube channel. Usually takes about 24 hours, but thank you for joining us. This is our fourth and fifth grade parent information night, and the reason we're having these is we want to give you all the information that you'll need to make a decision as to whether on-campus learning is right for your child or whether you'd prefer them to stay on distance learning. If you've participated in these with some younger kids, I've got some good news for you. Our plans have been working pretty much as we've expected them. We've made a few tweaks, but if you heard this in the K1 or the 2-3, you'll hear a lot of very similar things. So we're pleased to say that our back to school plans have been working. Kids have been staying healthy. Staff's been staying healthy, and we're moving on as scheduled. So to give you a little bit of recap, we do have a slow staggered return plan, which about a month ago, we were able to bring back some of our high needs kids to campus, kids with disabilities or kids that had English learning needs and so forth. We were able to bring back our kinder and first grade kids about 3 weeks ago, and we're moving in on our second week of second and third graders. And we're scheduled to bring back fourth and fifth graders a week from today. The purpose of this session here is not to convince you that you need to bring your kid back to school. It's to let you know what we're doing to keep them safe, give you an understanding of the academic programs, and allow you to make that decision. The chat room is open. Pamela is helping to manage that for us, so she may be sending you some private messages if your questions are going to be answered. We'll go over a lot of our safety stuff first, some of our academics, and hopefully get a chance to answer all of your questions before we're done. If you have any questions that pertain specifically to your child, send those to Pamela in a private chat or email us, because we're hopeful that we can kind of hit the big questions that folks have. The first thing I want to start out with is the question that we get is, what are you guys doing to keep kids safe, to keep staff safe at school? And if you were part of our dozen or so coffees with the principal through the summer, you were part of that planning process. And when we put our plan together, what we ended up doing is following the guidance of Department of Public Health. And we focused on four main areas. And those are screening folks before they come to school to hopefully not have people that are sick come on campus. Once they're here, look at distancing, cohorting, keeping groups together, putting physical barriers up in classroom when kids are not 6 feet apart, masking, which was a really controversial thing in our planning process. We have some definitive answers for you on that. And then looking at sanitation and ventilation, making sure that we have clean rooms and clean air. So we'll talk about those things one at a time. The screening process, if you have some younger kids, you've seen it. We're very pleased with how that's been going. We have 3 areas where students can be dropped off in the morning time. And we encourage, if you have a child that's anywhere from TK through 5th grade, that you use either one of the lots in the front, either the main lot or the kinder lot. Both of those are open. We have screeners out there. We also have screeners and drop off in the west lot over by the preschool area, but that's going to be encouraged mainly for our middle school students because it puts them closer. So when you bring your child, or if you bring your child on Monday, feel free to use either the main lot or the kindergarten lot. Both of them are fine for you to drop off. And once there, we will ask you to stay in your cars. We will screen you at your vehicle. And what that screening consists of is we want to ask a few questions about health, whether your child has any COVID symptoms, has been exposed to anybody with COVID, questions that you probably have heard if you've been to the doctor or anywhere else that has screened you. And then we will also take a temperature check. People ask, okay, well, what happens if they don't pass? And that's the reason why we keep them in the cars, because if your child doesn't pass, they're going to go home with you for the day, probably a little bit longer. If there's any COVID symptoms, we don't have students come to school. And if they have a temperature of 100 degrees or more, they can't come to school. And the protocols that we have in place are typically kids with symptoms are out about 10 days, could be up to 14, depending on their status, whether it's believed to be COVID related or not, or they can come back sooner if they have a negative test. And it's a real challenge for us right now because we are sending a lot of kids home from school or denying a lot of kids that are symptomatic but may or may not have COVID because the guidance that we get from public health is to be a little bit overly cautious. So right now, kids that have headaches or fevers or stomach aches or runny nose are typically not permitted or they're sent home. Some kids have chronic conditions through allergies and so forth. So if your child does have some of those types of things where they present as symptomatic, but it's a chronic condition, talk to Ms. Anguiano, because if we have that documented on file, verified on file, we can have kids come to campus that have some of those symptoms, but it's typically pretty restrictive. So wanted to let you know, but we've had very good success in doing that quickly and effectively. So we can get kids. We were really concerned at the beginning that we were going to have a staggered start to the school day, meaning different kids would come at different times and we'd have a soft opening. But what we're finding so far with our TK through third grade students and a bunch of upper grade students with special needs is that we're getting all our kids through the door by 8:30 and into class, which is really nice. And we believe we have some time to spare. So fourth and fifth grade shouldn't be a problem to add to that. Feel free to arrive anytime 8:10, 8:15. We will start symptom checking at 8:10 and then the gates open at 8:15 and we bring kids through and they go directly to their child's classrooms. One of the cohorting plans that we have is to not have students for one class mixed with another class. And so when we bring them to campus, we don't allow that free play that we've normally had in the past. Those students, once they get to their classroom, will stay with that group of students throughout the day. So when they go to recess, they stay with that cohort. Any other break times, they stay with that cohort. And it's one of the reasons that we have students that are dismissed partially through the day is part of that is the concerns about what happens at lunchtime. And so we're trying to kind of ease into this to make sure that people can stay safe. And the reasoning behind the cohorts is twofold. One is the less people that your child is exposed to, the less likely your child is going to get sick. Same with the staff members who are interacting. And the other piece is if we did have someone that did have COVID and we had to have a quarantine or restriction on certain groups, the less interactions they've had, the less students that would be affected that way as well. I am very proud to say that we've had students back on campus since the 19th of August, and we have no COVID cases in our students or our staff since that time. So we did put up a dashboard on our website to report to you if we have any cases, but it'll be pretty quick in public knowledge. It isn't something that we're trying to hide from folks. So if we do have cases, we will make sure that you guys are aware and allow you to make whatever decisions you feel you need to make. But typically what happens when there are outbreaks at school, if there's 5% or more of those students or staff that get it within a 2-week period, the school is required by law to shut down. We're a small school and we're looking to try to keep some of this restricted to cohorts, but safety is the biggest driver for us. Other folks kind of ask, okay, what if my kid comes through and passes the symptom check, which is pretty much most of the kids that come through in the morning. They'll proceed in through the gate, either the east gate or the main gate. We have them sanitized, and like I said, they head straight to their classroom. At the end of the day, pickup location is in a different spot than the front. So our pickup location for our 4th and 5th graders, along with 2nd and 3rd graders, is the lower playground. The way pickup works now is we have our kindergartners and TK students picked up in the kinder lot, our 1st graders out in the front, and our 2nd through 5th graders down in the lower playground. And the reason that we do that is we need to find a way to be able to space students so that they're not all on top of each other. And for those of you who have attended Sampa School before, you know that when we do our normal pickup, there is no distancing of any kind between our students. It is kind of a sea of humanity out in front of the school. And by bringing them down to the playground, we have the ability to get cars down there and get kids spread out. If you've been in those pickup lines for second and third grade, hopefully you've learned that we learned a few things to expedite, and we will be looking to stretch that pickup line a little bit longer to make sure that you guys can get through there in an efficient way, while still keeping the kids safe. The kids will be queued up by 12:10. So if you have a younger student, the younger students are picked up at 12:05. So your TKK first grades, 12:05, we'd encourage you to pick them up first. And then we'll start queuing up the second through fifth graders around 12:10. And then if you do have a middle schooler coming through, they're looking at about 12:30. So we do apologize for the multiple pickup locations for your kids. We looked at some ways of trying to get some families together, but we realized we were struggling on the accountability of exactly who was where. And when parents came through one line, we didn't know exactly where kids were in the other. So we do have those separate lines for you to pick up. So we thank you for your patience as we kind of go through this. The next big thing that we do after kind of the screening piece on the drop off is the distancing. And so we've made some modifications to different classrooms, removed some extra furniture, put up some barriers in places where students were not 6 feet apart. And I wanted to go over just a few numbers with you on fourth and fifth grade to get a feeling for kind of where we're at. When we looked at room capacity for our fourth and fifth graders, we could put about 23 kids into those rooms 6 feet apart. The challenge that we ran into when we started doing that is kids were pinned to the side walls and the back walls, and there was not a very functional classroom environment. There wasn't a lot of places for people to walk. There was some challenges on the instructional side. So what you'll see, and I'll share some pictures with you guys later this week because we'll share out the notes of this meeting and some pictures of the classroom so you'll be able to see them, is we have classrooms that are set up where desks are spaced apart. And there are places where desks are close together, but with an L-shaped divider. We looked at a lot of options as far as putting barriers in between students. And what we did not like is some barriers sat on the desks, which were perfect for kids who are leaned over working at their desks. Other barriers sat on the floor, which was perfect for students that were leaned back in their desk. But if they moved, there was a challenge as far as not having a barrier between those kids seated. So you'll see in the pictures that we'll send to you is that we have L-shaped barriers that cover the length of the desk and then come out about 2 feet so that the students that are close together have barriers between them. As I mentioned before, we have a room capacity of about 23, and our average class size in fourth and fifth grade is about 23. But what we're finding is that the folks that have committed to on-campus learning right now are about 14 kids per class. We expect that number to go up a little bit. We have 14 folks on average per class that have committed to that on-campus learning, about 5 on average per fourth and fifth grade class that have chosen to do the distance learning, and about 4 that were either pending or that we did not have a response from. And so the question that I get from a lot of folks is, hey, I answered that survey, but I didn't know a whole lot about what it was going to be like. Can I change my mind? And the answer is definitely yes. But we would like you to let us know soon because we want to make sure that the classroom is set up properly for when your child comes back on Monday. So if you have answered that survey and whatever you answered is still how you feel, you don't have to do anything. If you've changed your mind or you didn't answer the survey or you're not sure if you did, just let your teacher know so that we have an accurate count as we move into Monday and that we have the rooms mitigated in a proper way. As I mentioned before, we'll keep kids in cohorts. Recess will look a lot different than it had in the past. What we are doing now is we have a recess break that's still of 15 minutes. And on those breaks, we're only sending one grade level out per 15-minute increment. So our 2 fourth grade classes will be out just by themselves and they'll have designated areas on the playground. Our fifth grade classes will be out just fifth grade and they'll have designated areas. And then every week we rotate those areas. So for example, fifth grade, when they go out, one class will play in the grass. They have the whole grass area to play. One will play in the playground equipment area where the wood chips are, the other will have the blacktop. And then we rotate each week. And the idea behind that is we can keep kids apart, but still cohorted at the same time so that we're not intermixing those classes. There was a question about lunchtime. We are having kids, as I mentioned before, only going partial day, and that's kind of driven by two things. One of them is distancing concerns at lunch, as far as we can do 15-minute increments throughout the day of recess, but we couldn't do those 45-minute increments and keep kids spaced apart. So you'd have multiple classes out there. It creates a little bit of a challenge. The other reason we're going part day, and I'll get into this in a moment, is the way the academic program is designed. When we initially looked at designing an academic program where students who came on campus stayed with their teacher, and the students that chose distance learning got pulled out of their class and from their peers and from their teachers, there was a pretty big uproar, both from parents and students and teachers. They had bonded at the beginning of the year, and they didn't want to kind of tear that piece apart. And so the way the academic program is designed is your teacher is teaching your your on-campus students in the morning time and the distance ones in the afternoon. And so that creates the challenge for keeping kids full day. And when we get to the point where we can continue going for full day, we would look at those distance learners and see, do we have to put them in a different type of program? That's likely going to be driven by health. And so hopefully we'll have most folks that'll feel comfortable coming back as health conditions continue to improve. Before we get in the academic program, I want to talk to you about facial coverings. That was something that was a real big deal for folks as we were. Let me make sure I didn't miss any questions here. Yeah, let me get to it. Just a couple quick questions that tied into what we talked about already that came up in the chat. What will be the protocol for kids that will be walking to school or home? And so, yeah, we do have some students that are walking to school. What we would encourage is that those students, when they walk to school, come with a responsible adult. We know that's not always possible, but the reason that we encourage that is if that student shows up to school with a fever or with symptoms, we can't admit them to school. So what we would encourage you to do if your child is walking to school is to come with a responsible adult, or make sure that you have an emergency contact that can be accessed, because those students won't be permitted in school if they have symptoms. So we want to make sure that we can get in touch with you right away. And then the walking, those students that would walk to school would come up and they would come to the east gate. They would get their screening over in that east parking lot and then proceed on just like the kids who are getting out of their cars. As far as students that are walking home, those students would also be released from the east gate, but we just need to make sure that your child that you've communicated with your child's teacher that they have permission to walk home, because they won't send anybody out that way unless they know that it is approved by you. And be really clear as to if that is going to be an everyday thing or if there is some specific days that that's permitted. Skating and biking is still okay. We just need to make sure that you lock those up and follow the rules. So you'd need to have helmets and locks and all those kind of things. But those things are permitted just in and out of the east gate. Photos of what the classrooms will look like. I will send that to you later this week. One of our rollouts has been in the 2 weeks leading up to students coming. We've physically built and installed those barriers, and those barriers right now are constructed, but they have not been installed. So I will send you a picture of what those will look like later on this week in those 4th and 5th grade classes. Getting up to facial coverings. So we had a lot of controversy when we were talking about this earlier in the summer and as the school year started. And there was not a lot of definitiveness as far as what was going to be required in school. The guidance that has come out from the state and local health officials has a lot of wiggle room in it. And what I mean by that is there's a lot of things in there that talk about doing stuff as much as practicable or as much as feasible, or some qualifiers. facial coverings is one of those things that they put less qualifiers on. And they basically said that students third grade and up, which would be all of your kids, and all adults on campus are required to wear cloth facial coverings at school. And they even went so far as to say that students who refused should be removed from school and placed on distance learning. So pretty serious about it. We had and still have a policy in place that our K through 2 students, we strongly recommend facial coverings, but weren't requiring it. And we realized that if you're strongly, excuse me, if you're strongly recommending or highly encouraging activities among our 4, 5, and 6-year-olds here on campus, they're going to do it. And so what we're finding now is that we really do have all of our students wearing facial coverings. We do require at the screening process that they have one. We provide one if they don't. And throughout the day, they wear their facial coverings. When they are in transit, meaning walking to and from class or to and from the restroom or wherever they're going to on campus, it is required. Required in the classroom. When they are on their breaks, though, they can take off their facial coverings, obviously, if they're eating and drinking, if they're beyond 6 feet from one another, if they are engaged in an activity on the playground that is going to bring students within 6 feet, we require it then. But teachers are scheduling in mask breaks and those types of things for students throughout the day. And what we're finding is very little issues with facial coverings. I think we've moved long enough in this pandemic. We're, I think, 7 months into this now, that it has become somewhat commonplace for kids and adults to be wearing them when they go out. And kids have acclimated to that fairly well. So we've seen some good success with that. But like I said, we do allow them to take mask breaks when they're outside, when they're eating, drinking, when they're beyond the 6 feet of others. Speaking of the eating, drinking, and this is a real important thing to keep in mind, is for health reasons, we have turned off all of our water fountains on campus. So especially when it's hot, make sure that you are sending your kid with a water bottle so that they have something to drink throughout the day. We recommend the refillable ones. Your teachers will assist your child in refilling them if they need to. But we do want you to know that there are no drinking fountains that are on campus right now. Kind of takes us to our next point, which is our sanitation, which is the cleaning. That's something that we've really kicked into high gear. We purchased a lot of additional equipment. Foundation donated some money to us, but we purchased 2 main things as far as keeping folks safe. We have 3 electrostatic sprayers. So each day, classrooms are sprayed down so that the entire classrooms are disinfected. And also, teachers are provided on a daily basis with this product called the Lotus Pro. And what it is that electrifies or ionizes water, and it turns water into aqueous ozone, which is a disinfectant, but it retains the properties of water. So it's a disinfectant that we can use throughout the day while children are present. And it kills viruses, including coronavirus, within a minute of application. So it's a really nice thing that isn't creating problems with students' allergies, isn't exposing them to harmful chemicals, but allows us throughout the day to disinfect the room in a safe way, and then to spray the whole thing down with an electrostatic sprayer every night. So we've got those things in place. But we will be encouraging your kids throughout the day to wash their hands, sanitize frequently. Anytime they're in and out of the classroom, we want kids washing and sanitizing. And so encourage those practices in your child. Ventilation is also a big deal. So you'll see a little bit differently than we've seen in the past, as you'll see teachers teaching with doors open. We're making a lot more use of outdoor spaces. And we've upgraded our air filters to a MERV 13, which is the highest filtration system that was available. So we are taking some steps to do that, but I would encourage you to send your kid to school, especially if your teacher is making a lot of use of outdoor space, with hat and sunscreen. Hopefully this hot weather won't be sticking around too much longer, but we do have it now. The next thing I want to talk to you about briefly is our academic program. and the difference between our in-class instruction and our distance learning. And the distance learning is changing a little bit from what you're used to right now. You'll see a lot of similarities to it, but it won't be exactly the same. And I'll kind of explain to you what it's looking like. Is the folks that are choosing in-class learning, school day will start at 8:30. Like I said, we encourage you to come 8:10 to 8:15. We can get you screened and ready to go. Those students will remain in class from 8:30 till about 12:05. There will be a 15-minute recess break in the middle. And like I said, you'll probably have some times where teachers will take the kids out of class for some outdoor learning. And then at 12:05, they'll take them down, have them staged up at the lower playground. And then teachers will come back. They'll have their lunch break. They'll come back and get ready for the distance learners at 1 o'clock. We do dedicate that 1 o'clock to 3 o'clock time to our distance learners, but that'll vary depending on how what your child's needs are and what the configuration of those distance learners are. Typically, most kids and most adults don't do well with a 2-hour Zoom. So don't expect, if you're on distance learning, to have a Zoom from 1 o'clock to 3 o'clock. What you can expect, and we have parent-teacher, oh, no, we don't. Your teacher will conference with you if you're on distance learning to talk about what your child needs and kind of set up that plan. But kind of plan on that 1 to 3 o'clock time being your synchronous time for your distance learners, and your 8:30 till about 12 o'clock, 12:05 to be your synchronous learning with the teacher for your on-campus folks. It is a 4-day-a-week option, so it is Monday through Thursday. The Fridays, what you'll see on Fridays will be a combination. It'll be all virtual, combination of synchronous and asynchronous learning. We talked about the distance learners. This Friday is slightly different, and the reason I wanted to bring it up is your teachers are transitioning from their virtual learning to on campus. So this Friday, you'll see probably a Zoom of about an hour or so and synchronous learning after that, while we make sure the teachers are oriented to all of the safety procedures, the classroom mitigations, and so forth. After that, expect those Fridays to go very similar to what you're seeing now. Most teachers are doing mixed groups, those group 1, group 2, with synchronous and asynchronous learning. We do have a question about once there's a decision made on what modality you chose, either the in-class or the virtual, can I change my mind later? And so what we are looking at is we will never force you to bring your kid to school if you don't feel it's safe. So if you say, I want my kid to be in-class learning, and then after day 1, you're like, I don't like that idea, I want to move to distance, we can accommodate that easily. If you are looking at switching from distance to in-class, typically we're holding those off until the trimester breaks for two reasons. Number one, we don't want students jumping back and forth between them unnecessarily. And number two, part of our distancing stuff right now, as far as the ability to accommodate kids, is built on the fact that we have about 15% of the kids that are actually choosing that distance learning, which frees up some room in the classroom. And we're quite optimistic that as we move through this and as health conditions improve, we'll be able to take more and more kids back and do so in a safe way. So if you are choosing the distance learning, kind of plan on that through at least the end of the trimester, which is our Thanksgiving break. So Thanksgiving break for that. We did cover all those. Question about nutrition. We are not serving any on-campus breakfast or snacks. So if you have, if your kid has purchased snacks in the past, send those because they will be able to eat their snacks at their recess time. But we aren't selling them from the kitchen because we're hesitant to have a whole bunch of kids go line up and mix cohorts to buy snacks. So like I said before, send water, send snacks. And then if you do want to purchase a school lunch, those school lunches can be purchased. When you come for pickup, there is a tent that's set up in the west lot, and you could pick up school lunches. They are grab and go lunches that are designed to be heated at home. And so if you want to purchase one of those, you can purchase it over there and then you would heat it at home. If your child receives free or reduced lunch, they can still receive that free lunch, and we package those free lunches with the free breakfast so that you'll get the lunch and the breakfast at the lunchtime and then can reheat those and have breakfast whenever you want, but it's designed to be for breakfast the next morning. So that's how the nutrition program is currently working. There's a question about supplies, and does my child need to bring their Chromebook to school? So in the supplies, your teachers will be sending you out. If you are on virtual learning, you've got all the supplies that you need. If you are coming back to in-class learning, your teacher will be sending you an in-class supply list, some things that they would ask you to bring. Likely it's going to vary a little bit from what the initial supply list was at the beginning of the year, simply because we are looking at having students have their own supplies. So we're encouraging kids to have their own pencils instead of shared pencils, own art supplies, those types of things. So you'll see things that are designed to be their own. We would also encourage you, when we went on distance learning, there was that black bucket that was sent home with a lot of the supplies. Teachers are encouraging those black buckets to come back with you, and we would encourage you to use the Friday distribution time to return that. What we found, especially with our little kids, coming back to school with a backpack and a bucket and a water bottle, it was kind of a little precarious. And we'd be happy to, if you can make it through between 12 and 3 on Friday, to drop off that black bucket with your supplies. We'd be happy to have that delivered to the classroom and ready for your student for Monday. As far as the Chromebook is concerned, if you have checked out a Chromebook, we would encourage you, and you still need it at home, we'd encourage you to keep it at home. We do have enough computers that can accommodate students here at school while they still have a Chromebook at home, because even if your child is coming back for in-class instruction, they'll still have asynchronous learning on the afternoons and asynchronous learning and some computer learning on Fridays. So keep in mind that if you need it, you need that computer, feel free to hang on to it. If you don't, we'll take it back from you. But we will have computers here at school when they get here. Question about playground equipment. So students, there's sort of 2 different types of playground equipment that we're looking at. One of the things that we're really pleased about is, as the health guidance has come out, there has been a lot less concern about students catching coronavirus from things that they touch. And so what we do with playground equipment, like balls and jump ropes and those types of things, is those things, the students, before they leave their class, they sanitize their hands. They are permitted to use that playground equipment when they're down there. And then we spray all of that down when they're done with the Lotus Pro disinfectant. When we initially started, we were looking at spraying down the playground equipment like slides and swings and climbing walls and that kind of stuff. And the guidance that's currently coming out from the local health, because they have opened up playgrounds as well, is really looking at having small cohorts of kids for no more than 30 minutes, but there's not any current recommendations to spray all those things down. And there's a little concern about making them all wet before the next person gets on it, and what kind of challenges that presents. And so that's kind of how we're using the playground equipment now and keeping those into cohorts. And I got to the bottom of my list, and let me see if there's anything else in the chat room that we've got here. I know it's a lot of stuff in a short period of time, but we will be getting to, like I said, I'll be sending you guys some notes and that kind of stuff. Let me check here. I do not see anything new into the chat. Is there anyone who has a question? That you guys can unmute yourselves if you want. Let's see. I think Pamela's been answering a bunch of these things for me, which is why she's so awesome. Yeah, it looks like we've gotten most of those questions answered, at least all the ones that I can see. Anybody else have any questions about anything? I know, like I said, it's a lot of things. If you've got a kinder first, second, third, you've heard this before and you're kind of seeing it firsthand. But if you got only fourth and fifth, or fourth and fifth is your first one's coming back, I know there's a lot of things. But let me just reiterate that this is really all about you guys making some informed decisions and making sure that we can assist you in that. There is a question in here about IEP services during the 8:30 to 12 timeframe. That's a really good question. We were actually talking about it earlier today. Our specialists that case manage our students that are on IEPs are actually talking to our teachers right now as students start to come back and looking at how best to serve those needs. So there will be some of that served during that 8:30 to 12 timeframe, but we're looking at some possibilities to capture that core instructional time. If they need supports, they're removed for those supports. But if there's some supports that can be delivered at some other times, we are looking at doing that as well. So it's a little too early to say that with specificity, but we are looking to serve kids with a little bit more flexibility. What's the earliest we can drop off a fifth grader? The gate used to be open at 8. Is that still possible? Good question. The answer is you're probably looking at 8:10. If you came a little bit earlier, you'll be in that front of that line and get through right at 8:10. The reason it's not open at 8 o'clock is that we needed to be able to provide active supervision for students when they came through. And so 8:15 was the earliest time that we could get to have our teachers committed to receive students, because normally teachers would supervise duty stations for part of the week. And based on kind of how our teachers are contracted, we could have them available every day at 8:15, but we couldn't have them earlier. And so what we do is we'll start the screening at 8:10. We'll start queuing up students on the sidewalk, socially distanced. You'll see them on blue dots, blue and white dots in the front. And then at 8:15, we open those gates and bring them in. So if you're on a tighter time frame, if you got there at 8:05 or so, you'd probably be close to that front of that line, and we can get you out at 8:10. When do you think that the children will be going back to school full day? I wish I knew. Tomorrow, if I had my way about it. A lot of that's going to depend on the health conditions. We were really hopeful that we'd start to see a more rapid shift in health conditions in our county, which is a big driver for the directions that schools can go. And what we're seeing is a very modest, slow improvement. So we are seeing some improvements, but we aren't seeing it at a rate that we were kind of hoping and praying for. So I don't have a specific for you. I do expect that when we go full day, we'll be going full week as well. And so I do see those things moving together. But a lot of that will be looking at the health conditions. I wish I had a really good prediction for you, but it would be a guess at this point in time. Any chance a kids club will reopen before school goes back full time? Very doubtful on kids club. And I know that's a real challenge for a lot of folks. The reason why kids club creates some problems for us is it has to do with cohorting. And so if we had a student, we keep students in their individual classes throughout the day, and then we mix them all up for aftercare. If we did have some concern of that a student was ill, say if a student got diagnosed with COVID, not only would those students in kids club have to quarantine, but any kid that they had close contact with within other classes. So it really could create a full shutdown for the school if we had something along those lines. So kids club is likely to be another one of those things that as health conditions improve, we'll be able to lessen these. Our goal is to look at some of these health conditions as trigger points. And as the area gets healthier, we can start getting, I hate to say the normal word, But getting back to normal in the good old days where kids could come to school when they're supposed to and stay all day and all that kind of stuff. Looking at your questions that are rolling in. Will kids continue to access library books by request and Friday pickup? So that depends. If your child is on distance learning, they will continue the same process of requesting books and getting them at Friday pickup. If your child is here on campus, they will use the same system to request the books, but they will be delivered to your child in the classroom. So if your child's here on campus, you won't have to come through that pickup process to get your books. They will get them while they're here. And Mrs. Carroll has been doing some really interesting outdoor library things for our little kids. And we'll look to see how that might apply to some of our olders. But she is working on some creative ways to put books in kids' hands. So, but plan on getting them here at school. Is there a staggered entrance time in the morning for K through 5? Fortunately not. That was one of our plans earlier on, is we thought it was going to take us a whole lot longer to get kids through the door in our symptom screening and our temperature screening. But what we've done is we've essentially closed our office down and poured every available employee out to do those screenings, and we're able to do it with a lot more efficiency. So the good news on that is that there is no staggered start, and we expect to be able to get all the way through middle school without having to do a staggered start. The bad news is if you need anything from the office in the morning time, there's nobody here. So from about 8:15 till about 8:35 or so, the phones are probably going to ring a little bit and nobody's going to be here for you. But small price to pay to get kids into class. And looking at a few new messages. Couple thank yous here for our teachers. They have been amazing. I spend every week meeting with the superintendents throughout the county. We have a weekly standing meeting where we get all the the updates and all the new challenges, and we commiserate a bit. And I can tell you that our teachers have been amazing in their willingness to step up and solve problems and meet kids where they're at. There are very few districts out there that have teachers that have dedicated themselves to their their on-campus learners for part of the day, their distance learners for the other. It's a challenge, and it is not the easiest solution that we could have come up with. But listening to the teachers and listening to parents, I believe it's the best one. So yes, I couldn't agree more that we are really fortunate to have such a great staff. So thank you for that. And I see Mrs. Morris said that. That includes our classified staff as well. We've asked our classified employees to do a whole lot of things that they've never done before. I can see Ms. Morris, and she's agreeing. We've asked them to do just about everything under the sun, and they have stepped up. So we really are fortunate. We have an amazing group of folks here, and we've done I would say, a really good job meeting kids under really difficult circumstances. The good news is we finally get to meet them in person. So we're really looking forward to have those 4th and 5th graders. And I can tell you from the kindergarten through 3rd grade, it brought this life back to campus, brought life back to our staff, and brought life back to our kids. And so it's really been a real positive experience. And our goal is to do that as safely as we can and kind of keep this ball rolling. So I know I've asked you or given you a lot of information in a short time, but if you have some questions that come up, feel free to reach out to me directly, and I'd be happy to answer either general questions or questions about your kids. And if you have not responded to the modality of your choice, or if you've changed your mind, let your teachers know so that we are ready for whether you're coming on campus, we're ready for you. And if you're staying home, we're ready to educate you that way. So thank you guys for spending time with us tonight. I really appreciate it. I know you're busy. I know you hate Zoom by now. And so I appreciate you taking some time with me. If you have questions, like I said, reach out, let us know. And otherwise, we will see you guys Monday morning. I'll be out on the sidewalk with my temperature gun, ready to welcome you back. All right. Great to see you guys. You have a good night. Y'all be safe. Bye.